Hi there, in this video we're going to create a toothbrush model in Autodesk Fusion 360. If we take a look at a typical mechanized toothbrush, they might look something like this. We're going to do something a little bit more like this one, where you can see the body is actually a brawn and the top is a more standardized toothbrush tip by Oral-B. So we'll start by modeling that toothbrush tip, and I might start with a sketch that's essentially a half of that tip. And then I can use the revolve tool in Fusion 360 to revolve that around. I might add some fillets to that as well, because the toothbrush going to my mouth, I want it to have rounded edges. And then from there, I might create a circle and an offset plane to create the shaft that holds that toothbrush head. So you can see here I've got two circles. I'll use the offset work plane tool to put a circle off to the left here and also one back at the origin. Now I can use the loft tool, select both of those circles, and create that shaft that holds up the toothbrush head. I can also create a section at the bottom and do a 7mm sketch diameter here, and I'll use that and I'll push that in 3mm to create a socket. Now this example, we're going to do a fairly simple rendition of the toothbrush. Of course, if you're going to actually design the toothbrush, you'd want to put some more modeling into that actual mechanism. But for this example, just a 7mm diameter by 3mm hole will be sufficient. And again, I might add a fillet to that edge to keep it rounded off. Now for the brushes, we're just going to do a representation of the brushes. If you look closely at the actual toothbrush, there are little circles with bundles of bristles in each one. So we're going to do just 3 of these bundles, and we'll model cylinders. I'm going to do these sketch based, so I do a circle and then extrude up into a cylinder. I've got 3 of those. Then I use the pattern command to circular pattern those around to create the bristles. And again, each one of those cylinders represents a bundle of bristles. Now here I've saved this design and I've called it toothbrush head, and I have specifically saved it into its own folder in a project. So we can set that aside for now, and now we'll model the toothbrush body. And we created that socket or place to accept a 7mm by 3mm insert. So we'll start with 7mm and we'll extrude that 3mm to create a cylinder. We can just use the cylinder tool as well. We can add a material to that, and then I might want to add a base to this guy. I did a 10mm base and I made it 3mm high, and I can round off the edges of that base if I'd like. And now I can, using the sculpt tools, I can sculpt out the body of that toothbrush. I'm going to use a cylinder tool, and I did the fill hole command on the end of the cylinder tool, and I used the collapse method to get this shape. Then I can zoom into each one of these, and as I move these rings of edges around, I can start to make sure that this toothbrush body, the sculpted body, intersects with the base. At the bottom, the curious thing is if you don't just affect the adjacent ring but go one ring back, you can start to flatten out the bottom of the toothbrush. And I can push and pull and make this as curvy or as designed as I would like it. I might come and add in some sketch lines as well that I will use to create some additional definition to the toothbrush body. Finish my form, and I'll use those lines in this case to split the body. So I grab the body to split, which is my toothbrush body, and I'll grab the splitting tool, which is these lines, and I can do one line at a time, and I'll say OK, and I'll repeat that for the other line. And this gives me a couple different bodies now, actually 3 where I used to have 1. Now I can offset these faces and I can push them in a little bit and create some definition to this toothbrush body. Then I can add some materials to that. Now, using the same method of offsetting bodies, you can also offset faces. So I'm going first offset a plane to create a new sketch on in front of my toothbrush. So I'm going to offset this plane. And on this offset plane, I'm going to create some lines. And so I pull those lines across. And with each of these lines, I'm going to create a rectangular pattern. So I click on the first line. I do a rectangular pattern, pull it across, and have a series of lines. Now I can use the split face command to take each of these lines and split this face. The cool thing in Fusion 360 is you can select more than one face. I hold the command on a Mac or control on a PC to grab more than one face, but I can only grab one splitting tool. So I'll repeat that for each of those lines. So what I've done is created some additional faces now on this toothbrush body, and I could push and pull on those, but I'm going to use those to use the pipe command to create some little ridges for maybe a little bit of grippiness to this toothbrush. And so I can use the pipe command. I'll grab this pipe, grab each one of these lines, and again I hold control to get both segments of the line, and I do that for each one of these. I can also decide how to deal with the ends of those pipes. I can add a fillet on those, or I could use the press pull command to pull them in and overlap the rest of the model. That's really up to me. And then I can add in some materiality to that as well. So drag and drop some materials onto this. Now I save that into that same folder, and that's important. They've got to be here in the same folder. And so I've got the toothbrush head already done and saved there. And now I've saved the toothbrush body to the same location. And now I'm going to create a third design in this same folder. I've called this folder toothbrush, so here in my toothbrush folder. And I'm going to call this new one toothbrush assembly. And it's blank. There's nothing in there. I'm not going to model in there. What I will do instead is I will right click on my toothbrush body and I will say insert into current design. And that's going to bring that in. And I can see here that this is a link. Very specifically, I've got this link here. That little link symbol lets me know that I've got a toothbrush link. And so it's going to bring that in, and I can position that. Then I can right click on the toothbrush top here and say insert into current design. That's going to bring that in as well. And now I see both of these are links. The body and the toothbrush head are both links. I can move that toothbrush head into position. And the position I want to move it to is just kind of off to the side. I don't want to try to eyeball it. I want to be more precise and create an actual assembly. So I just bring this into the side here. And then I can create a joint. So Fusion 360 has some assembly tools. Their joints is how their things are connected. And I want to select first, the first component here is the tool or object that I want to move. So that's this first one. And I'm going to select right here, deep inside this little recess I made on the toothbrush head. So I click there. And I come over here and click Component 2. And Component 2 is the body that's going to stay stationary, component. So here's this Component 2. And I'm going to click right on that location. And what that's going to do is assemble those two parts or components together and create an assembly. When it does that, I get some additional tools here, especially this guy, a little rotate tool. I might need that to also rotate the head into the correct position. And so there's that assembly. I use the move tool to move that assembly vertical, so you can use the rotate tools in the move command. And then I've created a rendering. So I'm in the render environment here, adjusting the settings. You can see in the bristles I cheated a little bit. Instead of modeling each bristle, I just did a cylinder to represent a bundle of bristles, and then I used some of the material options in the appearance library, and I added some cutout patterns. So I used a polka dot pattern to create the little dots for the end of the bristles and a line pattern to create the horizontal lines. And so zoomed in, you can see I cheated, but in a rendering, or maybe not cheated, but I'm just trying to be quick and efficient in my modeling. I actually could model every bristle, but it might be a waste if I don't actually need that in my model. So I can use those cutouts. And then here in the final rendering, it gives an idea that they're bristles, but I don't have to actually model all of those. And so here's my final product, and I've got this toothbrush now, and it is ready for further design exploration.